All right. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome, youth coaches, youth parents, and I know we got some youth players listening to this, which is awesome. Welcome, 80-20 Baseball community. I'm pumped to be here. We got another full episode, and speaking of full episode, next week's episode will be full of useful and applicable stuff coming from the author and coach, J.P. Nerbun, who just came out with his third book on the topic of getting parents on board with the coaching staff to have a successful and cohesive, fun season year. So JP's interview will be coming to all of you next week. Here are some of the questions that JP will be answering. What are the two biggest drivers in creating a great team culture? What are the two biggest things we need to do as coaches to create a great team culture? How can youth coaches apply the 80-20 principle, the 80-20 rule to build an extraordinary team culture? What are the two biggest mistakes coaches make that damage team cultures? He'll share a couple stories of how he helped coaches resolve an issue with a difficult parent. I also asked JP to answer the question, in what ways are parents harming youth sports and how can coaches address those problems proactively? I also asked, what are the top two things coaches can do to foster a collaborative partnership with parents? And how can coaches effectively enforce healthy boundaries with parents? So it's cohesive, it's productive, and it's an overall great partnership. So that's coming next week. It looks like that interview will take up 3 episodes. Hey, head over to the 8020baseball.com website. Head over to 8020baseball.com and grab yourself the drill design guide. It's a 21-page PDF. It's great off-season reading. It'll help set your paradigm, your mindset, so you can better look at drills and know where they can be better. It'll help you to build better drills from scratch. It tells you the 8 parts to a great drill. Not that each drill is going to have all 8 parts at one time, but it tells you the 8 parts, and it's a great off-season reading. You can have that to your inbox in less than 90 seconds. I won't spam you. I'm not giving your email out to anybody. I'm the one who deals with all of this on the back end, so it's all good there. So speaking of that interview coming up next week on this podcast, a paraphrased quote from JP's second book, The Culture System, goes as follows, quote, "The more you connect, the easier it is to correct. The more you connect, the more impact you'll have when you correct," end quote. So that's a quote. I paraphrased it a little bit from JP's book, The Culture System, which in fact I read cover to cover the week of the interview, which took place last week. And I really liked that quote and I really wanted to share it with all of you. The more you connect, the easier it is to correct. The more that we connect with our players, with our kids, the more impact we will have when we correct them. It's a lot easier to correct our kids, our players, the more we've connected. The stronger the connection, the easier it is to correct. So before we do a bunch of correcting, let's make sure that we're doing a lot of connecting. And that connecting goes back to asking questions, not just addressing the surface level behavior, getting to know players, making sure they feel heard, working cohesively with the parents and families, letting them feel heard. Connecting starts there. Being upfront with our expectations, being clear, being fair, giving a good reason why you have these expectation standards and rules, why it's in their best interest, why it's in the best interest of them and the team, how it's going to help them be awesome adults, giving praise, praising their effort more than anything, praising their effort, their attitude, their good sportsmanship, being a good teammate, hustle. So look to connect before we correct, or look to connect a lot more than we correct. Speaking of not overcorrecting, it's winter time. Roads might get a little icy where you're at. You don't want to overcorrect. And that's something that my pops taught me. I remember we were driving through a blizzard in northern Arizona. This would have been around 1990. And of course, we're coming from Southern California. I was over playing a soccer tournament in the Phoenix area, and my parents took me up to Flagstaff. Beautiful area, northern Arizona, beautiful. beautiful country. We went to Four Corners. For those of you that don't know what Four Corners is or where that's at, it's the only spot in the United States where 4 of the 50 states come together: New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. And you can put a hand in 2 of the states and your feet in 2 of the others, and you can technically be in 4 states at once. That's pretty cool. So we went up to Flagstaff, northern Arizona, went to Four Corners, checked all that out, and we woke up and there was a blizzard, pretty good blizzard. Well, at least for Southern California standards. And we're driving down the highway after we eat breakfast, and our car starts doing a 360. And I just remember doing a 360, and I remember looking out the windshield, which was actually looking back from where we were coming from, the opposite direction of where we were headed, because we were spinning around and there was a huge semi not that far behind us. And I just remember how calm and collected my mom and dad stayed. My mom in the passenger seat and my dad driving. He stayed calm and he didn't overcorrect. He let the car slide. He let it come back around. And then he just casually corrected and straightened it back out. And that was that. Didn't overcorrect. And my dad took that same mindset into being a Little League coach. He was my Little League coach all the way through, except for 1 year when he moved up to coach my brother. And he never overcorrected. He never overcoached. And we won our fair share of games. We won a lot. And so I wanted to tie in something here about Patrick Mahomes last week losing his cool. I was listening to the audio of him and he was upset. He lost his cool. And I'm a big Patrick Mahomes fan. My wife and I were big Patrick Mahomes fans. I really love how he plays, but hey, nobody's perfect and he made a mistake. He's a competitor. I think it's important we don't get fooled by the surface look, the casual look, the swagger. He's ultra competitive and he didn't handle a bad call against the Bills very well. I think they got caught on the mic being a poor loser. And he didn't handle the bad call very well. And it made me think about my old man coaching our Little League team. In 1991, we were playing the first place team in the league. We were going to the bottom of the 6th. We had just taken the lead in the top of the 6th. So we're going to the bottom of the 6th inning. We're up 1 run. And I remember like it was yesterday, Andre was on the other team. And he got to the batter's box and he looked nervous, hesitant. And then he asked the umpire for timeout. And it was getting darker. It was getting close to that time where they could call the game, but there was enough light. And I see Andre ask the umpire for timeout. He asked for timeout and then he goes down and starts tying his shoe. And he's not tying his shoe like you normally tie your shoe. He's tying his shoe really slow. And then he ties it twice. And he's tying his shoe and it's taking a long time. And then he gets in the batter's box and the inning starts. And I can't quite remember if it was him or the next hitter who turned to the umpire and said, "Hey, I can't see the ball." And the umpire fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, and called the game. And by Little League rules, as many of you know where I'm going with this, the score reverted back to the previous inning when we were losing and the other team was winning. So we lost the game. And I just remember my dad staying really calm, not making a big deal about it. A couple years later, I ran into Andre and I said, "Hey, what happened?" He said his coach had told him to go up there and stall, tie his shoes. And their coach had told their hitter to tell the umpire he couldn't see the ball. So their coach wanted to win so bad, he had his players lie and essentially do some things that were not very sportsmanlike, borderline unethical. And I just remember my dad handling it so calm and collected. I see these videos of coaches going berserk over bad calls. We lost the game, and I just remember my dad not talking about it that much after that. Years later, I talked to him about it when I was older, and I thought that was a good example of how to coach. My dad is not a pushover by any means. He's the opposite. My parents are not afraid to speak up or to take care of their family. But he thought this wasn't the time or the place. He didn't want to set a bad example. The umpire called the game. There really wasn't a whole lot to argue with the umpire. The umpire said, "Hey, kid says he can't see. It's going to go down to it. They said, we said." And my dad realized it was a lose-lose. And I think he handled it really well. So I want to share that example of, hey, if you're coaching just for wins, then that's going to be a big deal. We're going to blow a gasket on that. But if we're coaching for a bigger purpose of having a fun time, of having a good time, of using sports as this amazing vehicle to prepare our kids for life, well, if that's the goal, as it should be, then that'll take you down the path of not blowing a gasket, staying calm and collected, and moving on. And that wasn't the first time my dad had seen other coaches do shady things. In fact, our first year in 1987, one of the other coaches of the second place team, we ended up finishing first place. Their coach would get to the game early and set up the field. Well, we didn't have fences, so they would put cones to mark the outfield fence, the home run line. And their coach would get there early and put the cones in right field closer than left field. Guess what side of the plate his kid hit from? Yeah, he was a lefty. And his kid led the league in home runs, and quite a few of them went over the fence by a few feet. Now, the irony there is this guy was such a good player. Fast forward 10 years, that kid went on to become the California High School Player of the Year. So I will say this, it wasn't like the Cones were giving him all the home runs, but he definitely moved it in. And I remember years later, my dad told me that he saw that, but he just thought, what are you going to make a big scene out of it? What are you going to measure it off of? The measuring tape's not going to go that far. Or if you do, you have to go get some special measuring tape. The ones the PE teachers use or the shot and discus people use for track and field events. He wasn't going to go do all that and bring it out there. My dad handled this very well. So when you're in this situation, coaches, and the other coach is not doing things the right way, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Can you fix it without making a big scene? If we make a big scene, then we are telling our players that our priority is to win the game, and we're focused directly on the score and wins and losses, especially in these two cases. So I think we should save our energy as coaches and parents for those situations where it's a safety concern, it's a sportsmanship concern, a bullying concern. Those are the times you really want to rise up and say something. If it's blatant cheating and it's very easy to prove and the umpires can reverse the action or the call or whatnot, maybe you address it then, but address it low key. Don't call out the other coach. Don't make a scene with the other coach. Don't make a scene. We're there for the kids, not for us. And if anything, save it for a meeting of the coaches or when you see that coach and you can talk to him and just let him know. But again, is it worth it? You have to ask yourself that. And most of the time, it is not worth it. Now, before we dive into our final segment of our 5-part series, the biggest mistakes us coaches make and how to avoid them, today's category, safety, recognition, and simplicity. We'll dive into that in just a second. I want to quickly tell you about a mistake I made. Hopefully, we can all learn from this. I learned from it, but it took me a couple episodes of feeling like I was hitting my head on the wall. I made the same mistake a couple times over the last 6 months. My kid's great, but my kid is 6, and at that age, and at any age for the most part, we don't handle getting tired or hungry very well. We have hangry, but I messed up and I addressed the behavior of my kid that wasn't befitting of a polite, respectful 6-year-old. And I addressed the behavior. I was trying to fix the behavior. And man, oh man, was I wrong. I was addressing a symptom. So with our players, we have to ask, are we addressing the symptom or are we addressing the root problem? And I think it's really important that we always step back and say, is this a symptom or is this a root problem? And what is the root problem? So last night, the behavior comes on again. It doesn't happen very often. I got a really great kid, but it did come back and there was some back talk, raising the voice, some raising of the voice. Definitely really upset that we were trying to get our kid to get a few worksheets done from school, clean up a few things. And it hit me. I go, oh, my kid's tired. And I stopped and I said to my wife, I said, hey, she's tired. I said, the only thing that matters right now is getting our kid to bed. And so what we were trying to do was correct this behavior, trying to have a discussion about the proper behavior and how to behave well. And that would have been an absolute waste of time like it was the last couple times I tried to do it. So when a kid's acting up on your team or not hustling or shows up late a few times, it's important that we try to find out what the root issue is. Sometimes it means asking questions. A lot of times it means diving in, asking a couple layers of questions. In my case, last night, I didn't need to ask questions because, again, it's like you all know your own kid better than anybody. My wife and I know our kid better than anybody. So that's a situation where I didn't have to ask my kid questions. I just connected the dots. And I'm a big believer in looking at patterns and trying to see when the pattern is off and then quickly assessing the variables. And thankfully, my wife was on board right away with it. And we literally stopped in our tracks. Everything we were doing is in terms of parenting and trying to reason with our kid. And we stopped in our tracks trying to solve the issue, correct the behavior. And it was just like, how fast can we get to bed? And sure enough, our kid went to sleep 45 minutes earlier than normal and slept for over 11 hours. So I'm definitely not a big fan of talking about myself. I do think it's good to share these examples that I can speak about because, of course, I was there. But it's an example that all of us run into, whether it's tiredness or hunger or something else that's driving that behavior, that's driving that bad behavior. We're dealing with this a lot. Some of you have big families, so you're dealing with it maybe once a week or more often. So I like to share that just as a reminder that it's not about being perfect. It's just about getting better. And that's why you're here, trying to get better as a coach, showing up each week. So I wanted to share that mistake and some examples, some parts of the journey that I'm on as a parent. And in this case, I just wanted to raise awareness to us as coaches, parents, teachers, even bosses or managers at work, addressing the symptom versus the root problem. The symptom was talking back. The symptom was a poor tone of voice. The symptom was whining. The symptom was frustration. But if I would have just kept trying to fix those symptoms, I would have been running a fool's errand like I did the other couple times earlier this year. So after the second time making the same mistake, I told myself, when this situation comes up again, the only goal is to solve the root problem, and that is tiredness. The only goal is to solve the root problem. Now, you could be saying, Coach Bo, shouldn't we address the proper behavior? Shouldn't we teach our kids to have solid behavior and be good people and exhibit quality behavior even when they're tired? Yes. But in my opinion, when they're in a state of tiredness, when they're in the state of being super tired, I just don't see how that's the time. It's like trying to build a house on a mudslide. So keep that in mind when you're out there with your players. I think it's very important to ask ourselves, is this a symptom? And most likely it is, this behavior, this exterior behavior, this surface level behavior. And then try to find the root. If it's your own kid, you'll be able to figure out the root problem much faster. You may already know it off the top of your head. But if it's not your kid, you're going to have to do a little digging, peel back some layers, ask some questions, and then go from there. All right, the final part of our 5-part series, the most common mistakes coaches make and how to avoid making them. I got 6 plus 3 bonus, so I got 9 today. There is overlap on some of these, but each one by itself over the last 5 weeks, there's been some nuances that differentiate each one, although there is, of course, some overlap, and that's to be expected. The first most common mistake from the category of safety, recognition, and simplicity. That's a broad category, but we'll run with it. Number 1, overcomplicating instructions. Coaching points should be made simple and concise. Like Einstein said, something to the effect of, be as simple as possible, make it as simple as possible, but no simpler. Coaching points should be simple and concise. Don't overload kids with too many complex instructions. Don't talk down to them. Just be clear and concise with them. Don't complicate the instructions. The number one thing we can do to not complicate instructions is to be concise. Less quantity. That's the fastest and the best way for coaches to not overcomplicate instructions. The second best thing to do, plan out your message with some bullet points before. 3, give some examples. Give some examples that your kids can relate to, that they can picture, that they can see in their mind, that they've seen, that they can connect with that example very directly in their minds. Number 2, comparing players. Comparing players. We have to avoid this. It's so common for us to do this, and I would guess happens with most of us, is that we compare our kids to one another, our kids to other kids in their class, players to players, teams to teams, and we really want to avoid comparing, and we really want to avoid the comparison game. See, I think competition is great, and there's a stigma around competition, that competition brings out the worst in people, or in business, competition is a bad thing. And I think competition can be an absolutely great thing, and the best competition is us competing against ourselves to be better. So getting players, getting kids to be competitive with themselves, so it's completely within their control. Comparing players, not a good path for the most part. It's hard to avoid that completely, but I'd venture to say we overdo the comparing and it's not beneficial. So let's keep that in mind when we're out there coaching. Number 3, insufficient safety precautions. As coaches, we're really trying to set up our drills and our training environment to eliminate unnecessary risk. It's also not a bad idea to have a first aid kit with you, or at least a plan of how to handle certain situations, like a player getting hit by a baseball in the mouth or a bat. Just having a quick backup plan for those incidents. Having awareness, being present, not overcoaching the skills, not overcoaching every aspect of the drill sometimes helps coaches take that bird's eye view of things, and we can spot those unnecessary safety risks, prevent things from happening, and we can help prevent or reduce unnecessary injuries from happening. Number 4, blaming losses on the umpire or a player, even worse. Coaches, we shouldn't avoid finger pointing. And I'm not a big fan of coaches pointing the finger at themselves all the time either. I think it's a team game. I love the word we. So I know that's a big thing in the coaching community these days. Coaches like saying, that was my mistake. I take ownership of our loss. I'm not a big fan of that, because by saying that, then you're saying that you have complete control. Then the team's outcome is on your shoulders completely. Then you're telling the players that it's not up to them, that they had no skin in the game. They had no ownership stake. And I don't like that message. And I think if you do it too many times, I'm going to call out the elephant in the room on this topic. If you do that too many times to your players, they're going to lose some trust in you. And if you lose their trust, you've lost them. You definitely shouldn't lie and blame or point fingers at the umpire or certain players or other coaches. But I just think finger pointing in any direction is not a good idea. Use the term we all the time. Use we this, we that. And don't dwell on the past too much. Use the word we. And like last week, I talked about Dean Smith, too busy planning on how to get his team better to be stuck on past mistakes or failures of his team or himself. Number 5, not recognizing volunteers. Yes, this is a big one. Publicly thank and recognize any parent volunteers who help out with the team. This encourages future involvement. Shout outs to them. I would be specific with what they did and a couple of highlights of that and how that benefited everybody, instead of saying, hey, I want to thank Coach John for his help and contribution. Rather say something like, I want to thank Coach John for showing up every single practice early before all of us. He was here at 4:30 setting up the field. He had those tees in the right spot. He had the baseball buckets ready to go. He had the music ready. And because of that, we got more reps. We got better. We had more fun. And we got started with practice faster. That was a 30-second plug, but it comes across a lot better than saying, I want to thank Coach John for all his help this year. He really helped us out. So thanks, Coach John. Again, just bullet out these messages of thanks, and that'll help not be too long-winded, but give some specifics that really can hit home and make those people feel appreciated. And that encourages future involvement. Number 6, not surveying parents or players. Surveys. It's so easy now to do surveys. Just a basic Google Doc. You could put together a really good Google Doc, a Google form, I should say. Now, for those of you that don't want to give all your data to Google, I get it. There's a lot of other ways to do it. But my point is, it can be done fairly quick with technology. Emails, text messages. Emails is a great way to do it. Or just have a piece of paper with questions, survey questions on it, and give that to the player. The most important thing about the survey are the questions and the answers those questions generate, not how you give it, not the piece of paper, not how many questions, not if it was on an email, on some nice Canva document. What matters is the quality of the answers that are generated, the usefulness of the answers, the depth that the answers will come from, because the question was on point. Surveys are great. I highly recommend putting 4 surveys together: a preseason get to know you, get to know the parents, the players, the family, get to know them and get information that can help you connect with them. They feel heard right off the bat, but also to efficiently and effectively connect and close that gap, shorten that bridge between them and you, and asking great questions can right off the bat make them feel like you care about them as a person, them as a family. So get to know you survey at the beginning. Remember, trying to generate quality questions. My take is fewer questions that are better is always the path to go for first. About the 20%, 25% mark through the season, you want to have a survey that helps parents and players voice anything, share out anything, so they can get things off their chest, that they can vent a little or just feel like they're being heard and they have some input. I would do the same thing at about that 70%, 75% mark. And then a 4th survey. And again, this could just be 3 to 5 questions. And I'll share this real specific tip. Do your best to keep them open-ended. Do your best not to ask a question that can be answered with one word or just a few words. Do what you can, do what you need to do to make sure that they know you've read them, that they've been heard, that what they put has been considered or even used or is going to be put into action. It takes a skill to do this efficiently and effectively, but definitely worth it. I recommend doing one of the mid-season surveys as an anonymous survey, trying to get feedback on the coaching staff, how the drills and practices are designed, how the team's getting along, areas for improvement, maybe even something on skill development. And the end of the season survey, that would be a follow-up to the season, of course, and they're just putting any of their feedback that could be useful as a coach, such as, what are 3 things as a coaching staff we can do next year? What are 3 things that I as a coach could do next year to better help my players, to better help the team? What are things I could have done different? What is one thing I shouldn't do next year? What is one thing I should do more of? What is one thing I did really well that you really liked this year that I should continue to do or even double down on? Those are some examples of end of the year questions. All right, 3 quick hitting bonus mistakes that we make as coaches. Not having a parent meeting before the season. So you have the preseason survey, then a parent meeting. The survey is to hear from them. The parent meeting is to hear from you, although it shouldn't be all one-sided. Number 2, diving into complicated plays too early. We don't want to dive into plays that are too complicated early. We want players to have some success. We don't want to completely discourage them right off the bat. We do not want to discourage them right away. We want them to have a taste of success, at least a sample of success, or even a lot of success. And then we progress through the level of difficulties with our drills and training techniques and methods. And number 3, we're not challenging our players enough. So this is the opposite of number 2. We don't want to make it so easy that it's not exciting. We want to have some competitions. We want to have some excitement. We want to speed it up a little early on when we can. So you don't want to dive into things that are too complicated, like techniques and strategies and turning triple plays and double cutoffs and bunt defenses that involve the entire defense. So we don't want to complicate things too early. We also want to challenge our players. We want to make it fun. We want to challenge them. Diving for balls is a good way to make it fun early. Competitions against a clock as a group, that's something to do early. But teaching them a complicated hitting technique early, not a good approach. Teaching them 10 steps to the pitching delivery, not a good idea. So let's not get complicated with our instruction, but let's challenge them with the environment a little bit when we can. So there you go. We had some bonus mistakes added on, 9 total mistakes. Again, there's some overlap. This is the 80-20 baseball podcast, so we're really hitting on that 20 to 30% that drives 80 to 90% of our results. But within that 20 to 30%, there's nuances, there's details within that. A lot of people misunderstand the 80-20 principle is not diving into the details. It dives into the details. The 80-20 principle is all about diving into the details of the 20% of actions and inputs that drive 80, 90, 70% of the results, of the production, of the success. Again, it's not an exact ratio, the 80-20 principle. It's a ballpark figure, but it holds true in almost every area of life, and it definitely dives into the details of the big needle movers. All right, that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Get your drill design guide over at 8020baseball.com. I'll see you back here next week. And the next 3 weeks, we're just going to go right into the interview. There's not going to be much before and after from me. We're going to get right into the interview with author JP Nurbin, Coach JP. And until next week, take care of yourself, your health. Take care of that health, everyone. Let's do that. If we take care of our foundations, we can build ourselves into great coaches on top of that. And let's not hesitate to take care of our family. Let's be there for our close friends, those friends that are consistently there when we need them. Let's be there for them. And let's take this information out to the field, the training environment, and put it into play. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.